Y'all read the title, and let's start this video off with a little question. Does the term Fort Resurgence ring a bell? Let's be honest, it probably doesn't. So what is it? Fort Resurgence took place on the Al Bagra Fortress point of interest on the Al Mazrah Battle Royale map. That's a weird tongue twister. Looking at the other point of interest, it does seem to be the best option for a cut down map. It's pretty much its own island, has a giant fortress as the main attraction, and the POI itself already had a multiplayer map take place on it. Seems perfect, right? It could rival Rebirth Island as one of the best maps, and be better than Ashika Island and Vondel. So how did it play? After all, it had to have played well after the points I had just listed. There's no way it played badly. Yes, it did. This map played horribly. For one, the size of the map to the size of the lobby ratio was not balanced. Every Resurgence map had a spot for you to land in safely because they were big enough to have players spread out. Fort Resurgence was way smaller than those other maps, so 40 people landing on here did not feel great. It should have been reduced to 32 or at least 36 to reduce it by one squad. Now I checked Reddit to see some past opinions on this map, and many people actually complained that the player count was too low, though it could be because my experiences obviously differ from others. Another problem was how the circle was programmed. Sometimes it would be normal, have a reasonable amount of the point of interest inside of the safe zone. Other times you barely get a quarter of the fortress inside of it. I get that they probably didn't want this circle to play the exact same every game, but this is not how they should have done it. It shouldn't be barely a part of the fortress in the circle, and then the rest is just land with barely any buildings. This next problem also ties into what I just talked about. If you had this type of circle, you and the rest of the lobby are fighting for very few buildings. Look at this. I'm redeploying and the circle is moving on to Sarif Bay. This makes perfect sense. Oh my goodness, makes a lot of sense. Oh, and you might think that it played way better when the circle focused on the fortress itself. It did not. Think of a circle on Rebirth Island with prison as the main focus, dock and control center in it, and nothing else. That's the best I can describe what it was like to play on Fort Resurgence. That sounds horrible, and it was. A team or two is controlling the high ground of the fortress. Half the lobby is in the lower area of it, and a team is in these small buildings. Nowhere to land, and even if you successfully landed in a spot, there's no loot for you. I also have to mention how some games would end up in the water. If you hated Vondel for having a few games end in its waterways, then you'd despise Fort Resurgence. You can see in my gameplay that I'm using a pistol because I am not losing due to the circle going into the water. Resurging on this map was painful. You thought Area 99 was bad when it came to this? No, this was worse. And don't get me started on the buy stations. I'm gonna get started anyways. There are 3 buy stations available. Way too little for 40 people. Buying a loadout was so bad that most games you just wait for the free one to spawn in. If you ended up buying one here, then you can consider it an achievement because it felt like one. If there's one word to describe this whole mess, it'd be lazy. I mean, what the hell, the map still starts off zoomed out as if it were a normal Battle Royale game. The circle was lazily implemented, definitely not play tested, and was overall just a horrendous experience. However, I've been talking about how bad this map was. How is it forgotten? There are quite a few factors. Of course, the first reason was that it was bad. The reason Rebirth Island is so well remembered is because it was, and still is, a really good map. Fort Resurgence not being good made many players move away from this. It also arrived at a time where Warzone itself wasn't in the best spot. Warzone 2 is considered by many to be the worst era of the Battle Royale game. 2022 was such a bad year for not just Warzone, but Call of Duty as a whole. The multiplayer was plain garbage, and there weren't any zombies or there wasn't a good co-op mode from what I can remember. And the only thing that I can truly say that was good about Call of Duty 2022 was DMZ. I'm telling you, Call of Duty could make a lot of money from making an extraction shooter game. So with COD being in a bad spot, Fort Resurgence was not going to get much attention. We also have to think about how it's not exactly a new map. It's just a point of interest of Al Mazrah, and that's way less exciting than a new map. This was released in Season 5 Reloaded of MW2. Not only did it arrive on a reloaded update instead of the launch of a new season, but it arrived at a time where Al Mazrah was already in the game for a while. Also, Ashika Island and Vondel were already in the game. 2 maps that were their own thing and were considered decent maps. Fort Resurgence looks like Vanguard. Modern Warfare and Cold War are continually beloved games, and Vanguard is getting more obscure by the day. But you wanna know what the biggest factor was? The reason why this is all forgotten and no one remembers it? I just said the same thing twice with different words. This was in the game for only 2 weeks, launching on September 6th and being removed on September 20th. It lasted for 14 days. Hey, wait, this thing actually lasted longer than Concord. By 2 days. Holy crap! It was like Activision knew that this was lazy and horrible, that they just needed something worth the reloaded update. Well, as someone who had played on this map, I can say that it was absolutely not worth it. Had the POI had some changes to fit the shoes of being a lone Resurgence map, and was actually playtested, this could have been at least somewhat decent and remembered. And who knows, maybe other point of interests could have had the chance to be their own lone Resurgence map. But because there was little effort put into this side quest, it has faded into obscurity. And that's the end of the video. This is a very different video from my usual ones. I've never really done sort of, I guess, I wouldn't consider it a documentary, but it sort of goes over what exactly it was. This is my first time doing it, and I know it's shorter than typical documentaries, but I think it's alright. I think I did an alright job. If you guys like these types of videos, let me know, and I'll see you on the next one.